So I want to welcome to Milkshake with a side of fries the people to Reverend John Porter from Beaufort, South Carolina, and he pastors a church in Hampton, South Carolina, and I have the privilege to have him actually be my second interviewee for Milkshake with a Side of Fries. Just to give some introduction, Milkshake with a Side of Fries is my opportunity to interview men and women all around the country that I've had the pleasure and the privilege of getting to know. I have known Pastor John Porter, who my late husband William would call him Porter. And because of their military background, they usually just use the last name. So it's a privilege for me to have you, Pastor Porter, and sometimes Porter, I'm just going to call you Porter. You can call me Anita or Sister Helm or whatever you want to call me. But I just wanted to welcome you to this opportunity to interview you. You know, I have a burning question for you, Porter. I remember that before my late husband got very sick, he made it clear to me that if something were to happen to him, that you were the person that he wanted to do his last words. And I said, okay. And we never really discussed it anymore. I think I checked in with him maybe a year before he was really getting sick to make sure we're still. I got Pastor Porter to call. He said, "Yep." I said, "Okay." I said, "Have you talked to Porter about this?" I don't remember his answer, but had he talked to you prior to him passing away that he wanted you to be the person to do his last words?
No, he never did. He never did. But Bill and I met down at Recruit Training Command in Orlando, Florida, and we have been working in the same office. And at the time when I met him, I was not saved. I didn't even know he was a minister, but he always sat in the back of the room. He was over the supervisor of the office, over the yeoman, and he was always reading. But one day he said something, and that led me to question him. And he said, he told someone, he said, "I can marry you, and I can also bury you." And with that in mind, I asked him, I said, "Well, are you a minister?" He said, "Yes, I am." And we began to talk from that point on. And the thing that really got me, he continued to, every day he was reading something, but it was nothing pertaining to what his job title was. He was always reading a religious book, a Christian book, and then as we began to talk, and I have always had a love for the Lord, but I was not saved. And I say that because when I got baptized in the fall of 1963, but I really didn't give my life to the Lord for salvation until '84 down in Orlando, Florida. I worked in the church. I was faithful in the church. I've always had a love for God, but there was never a commitment. And without the commitment, there was no relationship. And after I met Bill and began to talk to him, we just became good friends. And he was so knowledgeable of the Bible that I was just trying to glean as much as I could from him. But we never talked about that.
Wow, interesting. Because I know that when he really got to the point where we knew it was toward the end, I finally said, "Do you want me to call Porter?" And he said, "Yes." So I think he understood that it was close and he needed that for me to have that conversation. And because you were so receptive, I thought probably you already had talked. But I always wanted to ask you that question, but at the time things were going on, I didn't ask. But when you talk about his reading, I think that also was something that was a draw to him and you because I think he always thought about books. He always, whenever we had for those that don't know, pastors and wives, it's a very close knit community sometimes. I say sometimes. But in our case, we called it the Orlando Crew because you're always a pastor and you're always a pastor's wife. So you can have relationships within the church, of course, as brothers and sisters, but at the same time, you're always in leadership. And there's always that a slight separation for going to the level of true friendship where you just talk and be yourself and candid and that kind of stuff for all different areas of your life. But the Orlando Crew was a group of pastors and wives in which we once a year or so often would get together in fellowship as a family of believers who also could just relax, and actually have fun together. And that was a blessing. I know for myself, and Pastor Porter, you have to speak for yourself. It was such a void, I think, when the change of William going to heaven, because I know that he'd love to have conversations with you as his brother, and I would have conversations in my capacity as a wife. So when that change happened, it's like that voice, that person we could confidant, that we could kind of talk to and explain whatever's going on and have a frank conversation. Not a churchy conversation, but in a sense, you talked about the Lord, but you had a discussion. It was always very interesting. There was a big void when I think both of us went through that transition a couple of years ago. But uh, now you talked about something that I actually can relate to. You said that you were around the church, you were doing things for the church, but that commitment didn't happen till later. So, do you have perspective of how it impacted your and Hazel's communication before and after you gave your commitment to Christ?
Oh, it's been beautiful because prior to Christ, basically out there doing whatever you wanted to do, and that's being in military life. Especially I used to tell people about Navy because people had this out there wrong perspective of what sailors was like. We going from port to port and all these different things that we may have been doing. It really was not so. But I did have some habits that I know was not right. And so when the change came, and you began to hang around folks who were like-minded. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, when I first got to Orlando, I was still doing some things I had no business doing, and one of my bad habits was I used to love to drink. I used to love to drink alcohol, and I began to hang around individuals who were not doing these things, but they never showed me any difference. Matter of fact, I shared with some friends from the Orlando crew. I guess it was the last time we were together, and I was sharing with them how one morning we went out to pick up some bricks, some stones for the church. And Brother Chuck Martin told me when we got up there on the way back, he said, "Well, John, I want you to drive this bus back because I want you to get used to driving the bus. The church has just purchased a new bus, a 40-passenger bus." That's okay. And I would tell a couple of brothers that y'all don't know that I had a terrible hangover that morning. But when we began to change and Christ came into the home, it just made everything so different and so peaceful. There were times where we may have not talked to each other because of some silliness for about, amen, it could be a week or it could have been 2 weeks. But when Christ came in and we began to see things from the same perspective and began to have the same vision and goals for our family, it just made things so tremendously different. The love just kept getting stronger and stronger, and we began to grow together like the Lord said, "I take you out of two, and I begin to make you one." And we begin to see these things happen. And now after I say pastoring for 31 years and being saved for probably 40 some years, it's just dynamic how God moves in and takes things over. Not saying that we don't have disagreements now, we still do, but the Lord shows you how to work these things out, and that's the glory of it. When you give your life to the Lord, He just come in and He takes completely over, which He wants to do if we would just allow Him to. He just waiting for that opportunity. Like He said, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if you open, I'll come in." And just like someone coming to your home, you open the door and you welcome Him in, and He comes in and He takes over.
With our youth, I'm very focused. When I started Milkshake Mondays, because a lot of people who were young, and I say young, it could be relative to young teens all the way up to early 20s, because a lot of them have different backgrounds where they were not exposed to people who loved the Lord or had faith or went to church or had any kind of morality or black and white, truth or lie. They just kind of were thrown up to grow up on their own. And that part of knowing who God was a part of their story that a lot of them didn't get exposed to. And what I've found with Milkshake Monday and the teachings I have is that I'm trying to break it down because a lot of them do not go to church or haven't put their toe back into the church if they have backslidden, as we used to call it, but they see what they're doing. Like you shared, you may have had the struggle with drinking, but something about when you're around the believers, the men that you gave an example, they didn't judge you for whatever was going on that morning with the bus or whatever struggles you may have had. They seemed to embrace you and love you. And something in that message of being embraced and loved is being lost to our young people. They seem to think that when they come to church, they have to be perfect or straight up and down arrows, that kind of thing. And Satan is lying to them somehow, getting them to go the opposite direction. Church is going to put all these boundaries and restrictions and no fun and this. And it's still, when I was a kid, that was the same kind of messaging, but I still see it's the same thing now that they feel. And even though you'll tell them your story or I'll tell them my story, I had someone say to me, "Oh, your persona." And I was like, every week on Milkshake Monday, I tell them about the struggles I have, what I'm still learning, what I'm still going through. I mean, really, for 2 years, they saw me go through heartbreak of trying to get through losing a spouse, but they still like, you're so this. And I was like, all of us, whether it's the pastor, the pastor's wife, man or woman that loves Christ, we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But how do we get that message, Pastor Porter, in a way that people don't feel that we are on this pedestal or got it all together? We don't. And we say it over and over again, but somehow they still say that they can't come back to Christ or they can't come back to church. I don't think it's Christ, because a lot of them just see the building. They see the pulpit, they see the church pews, and they see the church clothes, but they don't see the relationship part. How do we start to introduce that, pulling away the onion of I shouldn't say the word pretense, but that's what I can think of right now. What do we pull away so that they can come back, so they can come forward, at least step toward Christ?
I strongly believe that in the day and time that we're living in, there's a sense of, I would say, pastors that are preaching this prosperity gospel, and it's sort of taken away because they're giving a lot of our young people a false gospel, and I say false gospel because if you're telling them, you do this and you do that, and these things are going to happen, and if they don't happen, then what? They step away. Another thing that is going on with our young people today, that we don't want to adjust and make changes. And I know that God is a God that will not change, but I believe His method changed. For one, a lot of our young people they don't carry cash today, so they have cash out. So the churches have to change some of the things that we are doing in order to adapt to what they're doing. We're not changing the message, but we can change our method. And I also believe that with our young people today, that we've got to understand that we, like you said, we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. There's none righteous, no, not one. The times when I was very active in church but was not saved, people accepted me for who I was. Well, I went in there sometime with a hangover. I still performed and did what I had to do. But at the same time, I kept coming, and I kept coming, and I kept coming. And I think that's what we need to get our children to understand today, that salvation don't have a lot of restrictions on it. The thing is that if we invite Him in, we believe that Jesus Christ died and He got up again, and the Bible says, I think that if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. And once we make that commitment to Him, then He'll begin to change us from the inside out. Many times the people in the church want to change these individuals. We've got to let God do the changing on them. Let God begin to work on them. Let God, through the Word of God, let God transform them through His Holy Spirit. Because once we make the commitment to Him, and we truly make that commitment, and He'll know when the commitment is made because of the fact that He knows our heart. And He Himself will begin to work on us, and we begin to grow in the Word. Because the truth be told, even though we're saved, we're sanctified, we're Holy Ghost filled, we're still subject to make mistakes. We're still subject to mess up. We're still subject to say the wrong thing and do the wrong thing. And until we get home to be with the Lord, we're still subject to the snares of the enemy. together, and he's at the end. He's going to separate them. But too many times, once we've made our commitment, now we say that we are saved, and we are quick to look down at those who are not where we are as of yet. We've got to continue to let these young folks know, hey, God is a God who forgives. And like he told Peter, no, not 7 times, but 70 times 70. We've got to be willing to forgive them and embrace them when they do make mistakes, because we all have made mistakes. Embrace them in their wrongness and try in love to teach them, this is not the right way, but God has a better way. And if we convey that message in love to them, I believe that we can attract them to let them know, I'm not mad with you, I'm not upset with you. These things are going to be. But we need to do these things in order to get the attention or get our young people back to where they need to be.
You said something very interesting. A few things. The fact that embracing them with love, the change of the church, even with how we take in money because they don't use cash anymore. The fact that there are people out there preaching prosperity versus all the full truth of Christ. Those are interesting things. We went through a lot for the church in the last couple of years, almost 3 years now with the pandemic. At HUSPA, which is your church, HUSPA, Missionary Baptist Church, what really changed abruptly when the pandemic closed the doors of the church? How did you kind of pivot to make sure that you could still meet the needs of your congregation in the midst of that global pandemic? What really stands out to you that really was a big change for you? I know the physical, but what really changed as far as you and your relationship with your congregation during that time?
Well, I think we stayed in contact with the congregation. The thing that got me, I got introduced to social media because I was thinking, how are we going to do this? And we got the word that we couldn't, we had to close the churches, and of course some of my people there, hey, to close the church, we got to close the church, and we did that. And I was sitting home during that week, and I said, you know what? We need to do something with Facebook. And I wasn't familiar with Facebook Live and all this stuff. But I began to practice this stuff. And that Sunday, first Sunday, we were out. Hazel and I hooked up our phone in the living room, and we did a couple trial tests. And it was strange, this preaching, I would say, to the phone. And my wife would get up there, and she did the praise and worship, and after which I would get there and do what I need to do. One of the things, a lot of the things that we would normally do during the worship service, we'll cut out. So our service was cut back, because we were starting service at, I was at 10 o'clock, and then we would be there sometime 11, 12 o'clock, a couple of hours. But when the pandemic came, service was cut down because they were telling you, you don't want to keep people together for so long. But even on the social media, we try to keep everything within 45 minutes to 1 hour. And even after we've come back, we're still within that 1 hour window. We go over a little bit every now and then. But the crowd, as far as the congregation, to me, it expanded.
Wow.
I say it expanded because of the simple fact that because you were on social media, people were chiming in from different areas, from Texas and Maryland and different parts of the country. People were just checking in. And another thing I realized that folks were getting, they would do their service, and then they would get on someone else's service.
Yes.
Some people came about 3 or 4 services a Sunday. And our congregation now, since we came back, everybody have not come back. They're still watching on social media. Some people have got very comfortable with it. One lady said to me, I just enjoy getting up with my cup of coffee, and I'm still in my pajamas, and I can still enjoy the word. I'm at church. And all that is good. All that is good. Finances, it increased.
Wow, wonderful.
The giving of people increased because we had to set up an app for that as well. We had, for those who wanted to bring their money to the church, our trustees were there on Wednesday evening to pick that up from a certain hour, I think at Wednesday, they will pick that up. People were doing that very faithfully. Bible study changed, and it still increased because of the same thing. We were doing Bible study via conference call and also Facebook Live. So I think we never skipped a beat with that, and we stayed out for I would say 1 year. We stayed up for 1 year, and after a year, decided it was time to go back, and we went back January of the following year. Yeah, so we was out 1 year, and a lot of people are still hesitant to come back into an open setting. But we went on to put all of the precautionary measures in place, the sanitizer machines and temperatures and all of these things, and people started coming back, and soon as the masks started drifting away, making it optional for you to wear masks after I think 2 years. But I would say it was different, and I also think God did something special during that pandemic time, and it kind of weeded out some folks. And the serious people were still doing what they needed to do in the Lord and for the church.
Well, I know that in 2020, when it first hit, I get my years mixed up, but it was 2020. But we were home, as you may have seen us, and Rev was still sick, but he would still stand and do the teaching. And so Faith and I found ourselves being the choir. Now, I've always sung, but Faith has never sung. But praise the Lord, she got boldness and she sang with me. And I've never played piano in public. You know, it's one thing to do it in your house, and having to have it on TV is like, oh, Lord have mercy. But that was a good time that we have as great memories. And Rev surprised us because we have a congregation of less than 25 people, and we go to a county center there. And so they opened it up, and as long as you had less than 25, you could come back in with masks, 6 feet, separation and that. And Rev said, we're going back in September of 2020. And Faith and I, who were the two healthier in the house, I think we had some fear because it's like, whoa, what is this going to mean? Are we going to end up? But Rev said, I just believe we can go where we want to go. So let's do it. And I think if he had not pushed us to do that, I don't know if we would be still electronically, virtually still out, because people don't get over that fear. And then we had older members said, we want to get back, and so he said, let's go back. And but now, at least over in the East Coast, we have some more variants popping up. So some people are starting to get sick again, but not as badly as before. But we'll see what happens there. Did you encounter a lot of loss of life for people in your community or your church during that period?
No. I think when it first hit in Buford, matter of fact, one of my cousins was one of the first to die from COVID. Him and his wife both were in the hospital at the same time in ICU, and she checked herself out and went back home. He is still with us today, but he never came out of the hospital. And at that time, because I was afraid of COVID and afraid of getting around crowds, I didn't even go to it. Either it was a graveside. I didn't go, and I go. And my purpose for not attending was I didn't want to be around a crowd, because they were talking about people with underlying conditions and whatnot, and I know I suffer from asthma, which I believe I have thank be to God, I have a good control over it now. But I didn't want to put myself in any kind of danger. In the Hampton area, there was not many, but there were quite a few in the Hampton area. And I think the main folks that did they refused to take the shots that were being given.
Mm-hmm.
Take the shots. So it became hard. And then there was some individuals who knew they had the virus, but they would not isolate themselves.
Oh.
These were the individuals that caused it. And then, if you come into a crowd, you really didn't know. When you came into, you went into a assembly of people, you didn't know who had this virus or not.
You're right.
And so therefore, those who died because of the virus, I think the simple reason because they didn't do what they needed to do. But in our area, it was not as bad as a lot of areas that I heard about. It was not that bad.
Yeah, there were a lot
But
of,
it is rising back up now.
yeah. We had several opportunities to go to funerals or grave sites, but they were not, the people that were dying were not dying of COVID, believe it or not.
Right.
And even Reverend in the midst of 2021, we're still in the pandemic, and even for myself, I did a memorial service. I didn't know who would come or not come, to be truthful, Porter, because that's why we did Facebook Live for the memorial service. But I was surprised how many people did come, but to have a burial or anything like that in the middle of a pandemic, it's unique. And I know that a lot of pastors that had to deal with membership loss, they actually had mental health issues. And the thing about mental health, whether it was 50 years ago or today, it's better and it's talked about more. At least up here, it's embraced more. But even for people in the ministry, I don't know if they still have the same level of support for mental health as the membership, because they're like, well, why would the pastor need? Well, the pastor is a human being. Everybody is going through different things, whether people in health or our losses, all of us. Because the first thing I tell people who are losing their spouses who are in the ministry, I said, go to
Right.
griefshare.org. I say it faster than I can say anything else. I said, you're going to the Lord, you're going to pray to the Lord for health and strength and get you through in His grace, but nothing is wrong with you going to a group session or a private session or some therapist to talk about it, because grief is no joke. It's hard. And even if you have a relationship with the Lord for many decades and years, that pain hurts. You and you were going through your mom and Reverend Helm, and I just saw recently, thank God that Hazel is better. But I say those things happen. It all affects all of us in different ways, and more people are
Right.
going through depression and all kinds of stuff that they just need help. And there's not that many mental health professionals right now. They're struggling. The numbers are low for the people in the mental health profession right now.
Well, glad you brought that up because the mental health is a major issue today. It's in the pulpit, it's in the church, it's in the lives of our young people. And just recently, we did our Camp Positive. The Camp Positive group, we bring a group of kids together during the summer months for 1 week and talking about positive things, preparing them to go back into school, and we bring different people in from the county to speak with them. And one of the persons that came in this year was mental health, and she told us that she would love to come one morning to speak to the congregation because our young people, they're dealing with things, but they don't talk to anyone. And I reminded them just during that time that this camp that I recall a young lady in Hampton County went home from school and took a gun and shot herself, shot and killed herself. And a couple of kids that were there in the group, oh, I remember that. The child was being bullied, but she never talked to anyone about it. And a lot of our children are being pressured to do certain things and to being bullied, but they don't say anything. They keep these things within. Just this morning, I was reading on Facebook. A young man, I think out in California, San Jose, he just got a new job working with Netflix, and they found him by the Gateway Bridge, and they believe it was suicide. 22 years old.
Wow.
But we fail to talk about these things. That even us as pastors, we deal with things and we go through things. A lot of times it's dealing with the pressure of this member wants this and this member want to do this, and these folks coming to you and they coming with their problems. All these burdens coming to you. You need to have an outlet some kind of way.
You're right.
So I told folks a few weeks ago. So one of the things I like to get on my lawnmower, just cut grass, man. And we have a big yard out there, about an acre and a half. I get on that mower and just ride it and cut grass. Some guys I know they go fishing, some go golfing, but we need to have that outlet. Just last Sunday I did an anniversary for one of my preacher friends, and the topic I used was quitting is not an option. And I say that because in ministry, God calls us in ministry. God places us in ministry. We use that text, I believe, from Numbers, the 11th chapter. I want to say somewhere around the 15th verse, when Moses told God, because the burden of the people was so heavy on him.
Yeah.
He told God to go ahead and kill wanted to see a split in the church. So they decided it's the best thing for them to leave it alone. But the pastor wanted to do it. They would support us in going forward with it. Greg resigned his church not long after that. And I understand the reason why he resigned, because his psychiatrist told him that it was too much pressure on him. And one day he left his church on his way home, and the brother couldn't even find his way home. Wow. And he lived within, I said, 3 miles of the church. But it was a mental pressure. When he called me that morning and told me he wanted to meet with me for coffee, and he was sharing with me the problem that his church was having for us getting together to do that house for Habitat. He told me that I didn't realize there was still that much prejudice in my church. That was a very, very prejudiced place, back in the day. It's still not all that it should be now, can be now. We still have some problems, but it works itself out. But it's just that mental pressure that we don't normally deal with. I did have an opportunity to get with him and his wife. We were coming from Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and Hazel and I stopped by upstate Spartanburg, had lunch with him and Carol. But there's that pressure. I know another young preacher preached his message at 8 o'clock that morning, and then that afternoon for Sunday 11 o'clock service, between the 8 and the 11 o'clock service, he went home and he took his life.
Wow.
And because we don't talk. We don't talk. We say, well, we got the Lord, and yeah, we got the Lord. The Lord is my shepherd. I said, we have that, and he's going to be there for us. He said, I will never leave and I will forsake. But you need an outlet. If you just go out in the woods, man, and scream out, but we need to let it out. And I tell you, that's one of the reasons I miss my good friend Bill, because I could pick the phone up and we could talk about anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
You and a lot of people, a lot of men, Porter.
Yeah.
A lot of men were calling Bill, and that outlet, it wasn't abrupt. I think it was months that you all saw him getting sicker and sicker, but people could call and talk to him about literally anything on the table that they felt comfortable talking to him, and he would give you the straight scenario as a man who knew the word, and it could laugh and joke about football one minute and talk to you about a very serious subject the next. And a lot of men, I'm prayerful that they did get an outlet to talk to, because there were some struggles and crises that he was always talking to people all around this country about. And it's a void. It was a void for me, but I definitely know it was a void for many others, as men and women, but especially the men, because men don't open up. You talk about young people don't open up. Men don't open up. And this is white men, black men. It didn't admit them to the different cultures of men that were calling this house that he would talk to anytime. It's important. And, you raised something that came across my mind when you were talking about, at first, when you told the story of the Pastor Greg and the reason they didn't want to do the Habitat for Humanity house, I thought it was a financial one, which many churches have that struggle. But it was a racial, cultural, possibly prejudice one. And with you seeing everything happening with the political environment and people saying in churches that, I'm not getting into the former president, but I am going to talk the fact that people that say they love Christ, but there's such a animus and negativity and ugliness about the us versus them, and the black and white and Hispanic and the brown people versus the white people, and it's coming out of people that say they love Jesus. That's the irony, and it's a sad ugliness that Satan is just manipulating right now, that there is a prejudice that people are still, Sunday they say it's the most segregated hour because we have the black congregations, the white congregations, the Korean congregations, and we're not all coming together. And when we do try to come together, then they rise up and say, we don't want that. We don't want them. And I said, that's gotta be broken. Brother, that's gotta be broken.
Yes, ma'am. Thinking about that, fellow said one time, he was visiting this black church, and he got up to make some remarks, and he said to the choir, you guys think so well. Man, when we get to heaven, we're going to have to invite you guys over to our side. That's the some of these folks have about heaven and also about religion and Christianity.
Mm.
They believe that some of the things that they're doing are right. And let us go back to understanding that even before I got saved, that you thought as long as you were going to church, as long as you, right then I wasn't paying no tithes, giving an offering, working somewhere around the church, that all was well, you was in. They don't understand what salvation is. Jesus said, if you be in Christ, that you are a new creature, and the former things have passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our politicians, they hide behind this religion thing. You know, they'll come and say, well, I've been to church, or we'll see them on, on TV, they at church, but they're still making decisions that's going against the Word of God. Things that God is saying that God established, God wrote years ago before we came into existence. They're sitting down and changing these laws. They're changing the laws. And they believe that all is well. We got one of them that's running down, one of the GOP candidates. And he was saying that slavery was good for us because it taught us some things. Come on, man. What did it teach us? How to be servants? So this is the mindset. They're taking away. They don't want our young people to know about their history, our history. So they're taking these things away. Things that have been beneficial for us, human rights and rights and responsibility and affirmative action. They're trying to reverse all of these things. But yet still, they're saying they're doing it for our good. For our good. And to tell the truth be told, it was our grandparents and great-grandparents who really labored and made this country what it is today. But we're not getting the credit for it. But there's families, and that's why I always encourage people, when you vote, we can't tell you who to vote for, but pray and ask God to lead you on who to vote for. And God bless us with some spirit-filled Christian politicians. And, that's one of the reasons people ask me a lot about politics. I say, Paul said, don't get yourself entangled with the affairs of this world. And I applaud those brothers who preachers, pastors, and they ministers, and they're in politics good. I hope they're going to do the right thing for us in that. But there are some that they're just there to make themselves a name and to get whatever they can. But it's sad when you see these folks, and not only in politics, but all around the world. I love the Lord and I make this good confession, but then their actions and their behavior contradicts everything they're saying.
Well, it's interesting about, I've always been told sometimes, oh, you could be a politician. I said, but Rev used to say, oh, you got to be a good liar. I said, you don't do a good lie, Anita. And I laughed. I said, but the reality is you compromise. In order to get money from different donors, you have to compromise. In order to make people support you, you have to compromise. And you compromise so much that you don't even understand what truth is, because God is truth and you know what he says, but in order to keep your campaign running and in order to keep the donors coming and staying in office, you got to do all this kind of taking to the left, so far that you don't even know where you are anymore. And even, I must be honest, Porter, now that I am not a pastor's wife, there's a liberty there. I mean, Rev was always his own person, always. He didn't make me put myself into positions of doing things that I didn't have time for, because really I have full-time work and I was helping be a caregiver and taking care of family and doing different things. But there are times where these expectations of these titles are very restrictive. And even when I teach on Milkshake Monday, I feel the liberty to just teach. I said, I'm not a preacher. I tell them every time I can tell them, I'm not a preacher. I am a person that loves to teach. And I said, I'm fine with teaching, but I don't, because as soon as you say to them, a lot of them that I'm meeting now, people I'm meeting now, don't know who William Helm was, don't know that I used to be a pastor's wife, and I don't really lead with that, because once you say that you're a pastor's wife or you say that you're this, all of a sudden they talk differently, they act differently. It's like they were themselves, and then you say certain things and they just switch off. Yeah, that's great. And then all of a sudden, you don't, they don't feel that they can be themselves. And that's what I think is missing from what we're experiencing and how we go to share the gospel of who Christ was. Christ met them where they were, and they didn't put up pretense. They knew who he was, but somehow they didn't try to come and be phony. And I think sometimes when they get around us and titles, they seem to think like they have to. I tell you, so many times when Rev and I we were together for almost 25 years, we rarely got invited to cookouts. You know, the typical cookout.
Right.
Because the pastor come there, we can't have our cooler full of this, and this. Oh, we got to do this. Oh, we can't talk like this. Oh, we can't have the music. We can't. I was like, what are y'all talking about? We come from families. We come from reunions. We come from this. And if anybody spent 5 minutes with us, you know, we laugh and joke and talk. And I know how to play spades. I know how to do the electric slide. They're like, somehow they think you are in a cave. And you have no ability to smile, laugh, joke, or anything. We understand that we are not the same. I mean, in the sense that we are not going to do something to hurt somebody or to cause somebody to have a witness against us. But we're not going to go and say you cannot have any fun, and that's what people think. And even our kids, you know, they said PK kids. Our kids were never. I hope they weren't treated like PK kids, but I can understand why there's kind of this ostracism, because they're like, oh, you're going to be so special, you're going to be a goody two shoes, and they rebel when they get out of their parents home and stuff. Well, anyway, I just wanted to say I have two questions and I'll let you go because I want y'all to enjoy your time here in Virginia. Do you think that you have any bucket lists, some things that you want to, climb the mountain to achieve in this? I always say, we're in four quarters of life like football, and we're all coming to that fourth quarter. In your fourth quarter, can you see some things that you yourself or you and Hazel want to do in this last phase of your life?
No, I tell you what we do. We just kind of go day to day. We have plans. We wanted to come up here and wanted to see the museum up here. Preferably another year, we probably get to go down to see Noah's Ark down in Tennessee, and
In Kentucky.
hopefully, I haven't even mentioned this to her, but hopefully we in 2 years, I think we'll be right at that 75 a year. If we health is still good, and feeling good, we try to go into Hawaii and see what's
Oh,
going on.
that'll be wonderful.
Yeah, but other than that, we just take it day by day. Life is short, and to me, it's very precious. To continue to enjoy our grandchildren, and prayerfully hope to see them all be able to graduate from high school and move on with their life.
Wow, I
But
would,
as
yeah.
far as making a list out saying I want to do this, this, and this, no, no, no. Because one of the things I was going to do when I got out of the military, I was going to do a lot of fishing. I might have been out there maybe once or twice and went out there only because the grandchildren wanted to go out. That's what I was 30 some years ago.
We got to get
But
you
that's
another pole. Get you a pole, dust off that pole, and get you out there to fish a little bit.
yeah, we just take that. We took off a month from the church. So I'd say half part time because we still maybe might do some choir work, but no Bible study, no prayer service, or nothing. That's men's chat to be going on this month. I took the next 2 Sundays off, this Sunday and next Sunday, and just go relax.
You need that break, Porter. You need that break.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, the last question I like to ask people is, in your own words, your own John Porter words, what do you like to think that people would remember as your legacy as the man John Porter?
Hmm. Good question. I would say just love the priest, love the Lord. Someone who's easy to get along with everyone. We talked a few minutes ago about going to family reunions, whatever, wedding receptions, and whatever. People look at us because of your ministers and your ministers' wives and these sorts of things. And I'm quick to tell them, listen, you're not doing anything that I have not done. I've been there, and I want people to know that I was not always saved all of my days. When I was in the 12 years, I worked in the Department of Correction as a chaplain. And one of the things I was always say to the inmates, I said, you guys got caught. I didn't. You know, I'm a sinner saved by grace. And I thank God for that. But you guys, you got caught. And I didn't. And that's the only thing different between you and I. Because of the simple fact, there's some guys within the Department of Correction, or behind the walls, like we like to call it. It's some outstanding individuals, but they made that one mistake. And I just pray that, and even some of those guys who've gotten out have come back to me, or they have called me, and they appreciate me from what I've done for them while they were here, and how I talk with them and give them words of encouragement, and they're moving on with their lives. And those are the things that means a lot to me. When someone comes back and I give you that phone call or come back and visit and say, you said something to me certain years ago. Some of you forgot what you said. You forgotten the individual. But because of what you did, it caused them it changed their life. It had an impact on them that their lives would change.
Well, I know that my life has been changed for the positive for both you and my sister Hazel. It was a blessing that Rev allowed me to come and to become family members with you and Sims and Ham and all of the Orlando crew that we've had over the decades. And I appreciate that you've been a part of my story then and even now. And I really appreciate the love and support that you've had for me and the family. And my family, I told them I was going to be talking to Pastor Porter. Say, oh yes, this is great. They love you and they really appreciate all that you've been in our lives. And I thank you, brother, and we'll get together again, okay?
Okay.
God bless you.
God bless you. We'll talk to you later.
All righty.